We are here to unveil and display to the public for the first time two historical portraits that were painted by the noted Minneapolis painter Mark Balma, who is here today, under a commission by Mr. and Mrs. Harlan Crow of Dallas, who are trustees of the American Enterprise Institute. These two paintings are part of a series of historical works. The first, which was painted 2 years ago, is of President Gerald Ford and his three Western 1980s. They had less to talk about. They understood each other at a very deep level. They had been talking and developing their ideas for many, many years before their extraordinary partnership began. And they had, at the time they began working together, an almost unspoken vision. A vision which, I would like to remind everyone here, was shared by very few of their countrymen, and indeed, as Dinesh D'Souza will show in his wonderful book to appear in November, very few people, even within their own conservative parties, shared at the time that they began. This painting shows them on the south portico of the White House. It is chill and bleak. The trees are barren of foliage. And yet, as they look out, they are bathed in a profound and brilliant light and are together contemplating the vision that they see and that at the time very few others understood. Speaking for all of the scholars and trustees of the American Enterprise Institute, I'm very grateful to the Crows and to Mark Balma for bringing these wonderful creations into being. These two will be on display at the American Enterprise Institute.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is with a deep respect and a sense of honor that I introduce you to one of my personal heroes and one of the 20th century's most important conservative leaders, a person whose vision has given each of us the courage to change our own country, to hold true to our convictions, and never forget why we fight. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll give you Lady Thatcher.
Thank you very much for those wonderful words, and thank you for inviting us here in this beautiful room today to see these two quite remarkable pictures. For me, they're double with them, and I am quite pleased she's done a very nice, flattering one of me. It's always, you know, you always have a funny feeling in the tummy when you're going to see a picture of yourself for the first time, and you see yourself as others see you. And I'm just very happy with that picture, and I'm particularly happy that it's beside Ronald Reagan. Fate decided that Ronnie should be in charge in the great United States when I was in charge politically in Britain. It was perhaps fortuitous that we were not only serving at the same time, but we had almost identical beliefs from very different backgrounds, very different circumstances. We had come to this passionate belief that wealth is not created by governments, it's created by the creativity of man. And the task of government is to provide a framework in which the talents of individuals can flourish, whether it be the creation of wealth or the creation of great works of art or great works of music, or all of the many sides of life that go to make up civilization. And I think the first time I heard of Ronald Reagan was when he had been governor of California, and he came over to one of those great meetings of industrialists that we used to have every year. It used to be held in the great Albert Hall, which holds 6,000 people. And one year, Ronnie was the winding up speaker. And I wasn't there to hear him, but his speech was reproduced in the magazine of the Institute of Directors. And it was sheer genius. But what in fact struck me most of all were his last two paragraphs, because it depicted his life and what he'd been able to do in California, enlarging freedom. How it had brought a very much better life to people, better not only materially, but better because you're responsible for your own destiny and responsible for your own family. That gives very much more to the quality of life. And he posed the question, which was very relevant in those days. What would happen if freedom were lost? Now, if you think for a moment, two things have in fact characterized this century, particularly the half century since the end of World War II. One is the colossal advances of science, going faster and faster and faster. The advances of invention, the advances of medicine, advances of discovery. At the end of the war, there was no such thing as a computer. So if I just tell you that, you can see how far things have gone. Many, many of the diseases we have now tackled, which we had not before. The advances of science have gone faster and faster, as researchers count, and Ronnie knew all about them. But also, where he was so instrumental was in the other great battle of this century, not the battle of war, but the ideological battles between a free society of which America is the greatest exponent and we're perhaps the oldest exponent. And also the free society and communism. Our way of life, freedom, a rule of justice, private property, which has created a wonderful country, or the other way of life, which at that time was pure communism throughout the whole of the Soviet Union. A creed which denied the individual's talent and ability. A creed which had started because Lenin and Marx, most of the bad isms have come from Germany. I'm afraid. Yes, I'm afraid they have. Nazism and Marxism came over from there, fascism from the rest of the continent of Europe. But because Marx, followed by Lenin, had the idea and the arrogance that if they gathered together all the powers, denied freedom to every individual, took all the powers to govern, they could plan everything. And the individuals would be mere ciphers, and they said, we'll produce a very much better standard of living than any you've ever known. And it was this battle of ideas, this ideological battle, that went on during this century. Ronald Reagan and I hated the thought that any individuals could be under such terrible tyrannies. It didn't end at the end of World War II, because Stalin was still in charge. And these are the two things that have influenced this century, the scientific advance and the battle of ideas. Now, we defeated Nazism in the hot war, we defeated the Japanese fascism, we defeated every sort of fascism by war. How are we to deal with this unexpected new tyranny which endured through the peace? And so there began the Cold War. We were tremendously aided and abetted in the end by the advances of science, because Russia couldn't stop the messages of liberty going through on the radio, on the new communications. But every time either Ronnie or I saw the Russians, we would tackle them. We would tackle them about human rights cases. We'd give them so many names and try to get people out. But we'd always tackle them when they were going to come to greater liberty. And of course they were rigid. And of course eventually everything we believed in, and under Ronnie's leadership, because the leadership of the United States is the greatest leadership in the world, one did the almost unforeseeable. We brought down one of the strongest nations in the world. We brought it to collapse by our iron will and our steady actions, under which we never faltered. It was marvelous to work with him. He's just about the most modest man I've ever known. But when I have told you about that ideological battle, he referred to it long before it was won in the Albert Hall. And later on turning to him and saying, President Reagan, you haven't made any contribution. Would you like to say a few words? He went on for about 20 minutes on the whole philosophy of freedom, and they were mesmerized. And they began to understand the enormous good fortune we had to have a man like Ronnie leading America at a critical time. And so it was right that he should really get the full benefit, the full advantage, the full praise for the collapse of communism. And when it collapsed, we saw what a terrible mess it had been. That, I must congratulate the artists on this portrait, where both of us, because while we're both in power, looking into the future, realizing that it is going to be a better future. It's going to be a better future because of the things we stood for. Let me just remind you, this is the half century when we have not had a major war. Thank goodness. Because we hope with the work we did that there'll never be another one again. We have terrorism, yes, but no major war. And what a wonderful thing that is, and how different it is from the first half century. His period of office ended a little bit before mine. We were so very sad when he left. But I remember his summing up on radio and television of his record, finishing, not bad, not half bad. Ronnie dear, it was terrific. And the portrait does you justice. Can I say I also know all of these four gentlemen. Mr. Ford is a marvelous person, a lovely, genuine person. Such a pity he wasn't able to win his election and carry on. Wonderful. Sometimes people think politicians are brittle or cynical. There's no one there who is brittle or cynical, and no, there's no one there who is brittle or cynical. For a moment, because they're not all of our side, are we? President Ford was marvelous. Jim Callahan was a very good Labour member. He fortunately allowed me to beat him in the 1975 election, for which I might be profoundly grateful. And so we were able to start the renaissance of Britain at the same time as Ronnie was doing the renaissance of America. Helmut Schmidt was the best political economist I have ever known, and also perhaps one of the best people who could foresee the longer view on foreign affairs. But we've never had such a good political economist as he, and he could explain his words, and he spoke English marvelously. It always helps when all of these foreign people, and so did President Giscard d'Estaing. Now, throughout post-war history, France and Germany have been very close, and they were very close. And sometimes I felt a little bit kind of out of their deliberations, but I didn't worry. I was a much more important relationship. I was the Anglo-American relationship, and it's that I've done quite frankly now. So, it is really wonderful that these scenes are depicted. They are history. It's quite something to be alive and still be history. I hope that goes on for quite a time, yes, that we are depicted. These are part of history. I don't know what future generations will make of them, but I hope they'll see that it was everything that is good in liberty and justice and in the people of America and in the people of our country that has kept freedom for the future. And perhaps maybe the next century we should have a whole century without major wars. And maybe these people have had just a little to help to bring that about. Thank you so much for watching.